Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Goldmaking, presented by darkshorecapital. It is currently October 16th, 2018, and a quick note on this, the days for the release of this podcast are going to be changed to Tuesdays, and very likely the recording and data collection as well. Just for real life reasons, it's easier for me to get it on Tuesdays. So, without further ado, let's get into the market update. And as I mentioned, the data for these are going to be pulled from Tuesdays from now on, so for this 1 day, week to date actually means trailing 8 days, but that's neither here nor there. So, things that are happening, not a whole lot. Tokens going up a little bit, tends to happen, fluctuates up and down, not really a whole lot of interesting stuff there. Looks like markets are pretty boring on the US side, however, all of our current content items over on the EU side are just completely down for the month, for the week. And interestingly enough, Starlight Rose, the old Legion material for crafting flasks and potions, it's up 10% on the EU, 17% on the US. I'm not really sure where that's coming from, but there you go. Sky Golems continue to go downwards, not too much surprise there. I did finally get some values for ahead of the curve and plus 10 keys for the EU side. It's not actually on the slide here, but the ahead of the curve price looks to be around 200,000 gold for all of you on the EU. I need to do a little bit better job of getting more accurate prices for all these. I always try and ask people in trade chat when they are selling boosts for gold, but my playtime has been a little bit limited as of late, so I don't have the most up-to-date information, though I do have a few other sources which might be a little more reliable. And lastly, ATVI, up 1% on the week. There's been a lot of buzz in the kind of stock community, whatever you want to call it, about Activision Blizzard, mostly around the release of the Black Ops 4 Battle Royale, which was last week, I believe. Moving on to the news. Not a whole lot of news this week. The only bit that I could find that was interesting, the Trade Skill Master guys made a post on Reddit saying that they are thinking about making some changes to the TSM database pricing. And what I gathered was, basically, if you have the TSM desktop app, you download all the pricing from the US and from EU. Now, there's a very, very, very small percentage of players that use both of those data sets, and I'm sure they will allow you to continue to do so if you desire, but I think for the vast majority of us, it's going to wind up being that we only get one set of data, which should reduce load times when loading into the game, and it should just increase performance overall. They also mentioned in this post that they're looking to add support for the other regions. I think the Taiwanese region and the Chinese region, it sounds like, Blizzard has support for getting pricing data through their API. So that'll be cool. It's always interesting and good to have more ubiquity across the globe for pricing stuff. And, maybe we'll look at tracking some of those prices too, just to see what the differences are. Maybe we can glean some information from that. Going straight into QA this week. Number 1, will the market bounce back with the new raid? Now, I included this question for a specific reason. As you'll know, if you're a follower of the podcast, I am a fan of saying things like, always be extremely skeptical of anyone who claims to predict the future. So, disclaimer, I'm not trying to predict the future, and I'm not trying to answer this question directly as the person who asked this. What I will say is that historically, prices of flasks and potions increase with the release of a new raid. Consumables in general, anything that could be useful for a raider, tends to see an increase in price when a new raid drops. Now, this is not some crazy new revelation. This is a fairly well-established thing that's happened over and over again. So I would say that it is very likely that those markets will, quote-unquote, bounce back with the new raid. Next question, does TSM4 still crash my WoW? And I included this question because I did want to talk about this, because I've noticed almost no crashes at all with TSM4 as of late. I think it was, I want to say 4.4.4 when I first noticed that I was no longer getting crashes on TSM4. So hats off to the TSM4 guys. You freaking did it. No more crashing. I'm extremely happy about that, and honestly, that was kind of the main thing keeping me from really being someone to endorse TSM4 as a good add-on to use. So hats off to you guys. Well done. Get on TSM4. It doesn't crash anymore. There's still some differences and other things to talk about, but you can work through those. All right, next question. Question about selling crafted recipes that are unobtainable. Basically, you're in for a tough time because the number of people desiring this type of stuff is very low. Unobtainable recipes, unobtainable items, there's not a whole lot of practical use for them in the game. They're collector's items, right? And it can be hard to sell collector's items because there's almost no liquidity. Now that said, there are methods you can use. You can spam trade chat. You can list your items on the auction house and hope that somebody eventually will take notice and, ideally send you a whisper and be like, hey, I saw you're listing this item and I kind of want it, so maybe we can come to a deal. I've been doing that for at least a year, probably more, with a few items. And I can say from experience, I've had exactly zero interest in any of the rare, unobtainable items and recipes that I do that with. So I don't know if I can really recommend doing that. I've had no success. You can make like a spreadsheet and post it on, your Twitter feed or on Reddit. Well, probably not on Reddit. Maybe there's some spots on Reddit, but as far as I know, there's not a healthy community of rare and unobtainable collectors on Reddit, so probably would avoid that one. Other than that, there's some Discords that might be useful, or just trying to figure out who these people actually are. I know one. I'm not going to say their name, but I do know of one. I may actually do a video about that in the future. It's on my list. We will see. Moving on. How to deal with auction house deposit when selling expensive mats. Well, how about this? First, let's ask, why are these materials so expensive? Well, it's probably because they're useful for crafting something that is also very expensive and sells for a lot of money. So instead of listing the material, why not craft the thing and then sell that and just completely get around that crazy change they made to auction house material deposits? That would be my advice. And finally, have war fronts mostly died down? Yes, I think that's the case. I don't have a lot of empirical evidence for this, but it sounds like, just from what I've read, there's not a whole lot of interest, not as many people making as much money with them. And this is pretty much in line with what I was predicting, in that the rewards for doing the turn-in of the war fronts are just so uninteresting and just not compelling at all. It's reputation and artifact power. And I can't speak for everyone, but for me, as an actual player of the game, I don't care about those two things anymore. I think I have all my reputations at Revered, like whatever, okay, they got there. And artifact power, well, I unlocked most of the traits. It's good enough. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm not like waiting for the war fronts to come out so I can get some more artifact power. No, I just can't be bothered. So I think that's probably a big reason why. And this still baffles me. Like, you don't need to like turn in a certain amount of stuff to like enable the war front. It just happens over time. We could have it where literally no one turns anything in, and then 2 or 3 days later, however long it is, the war front just starts. That just seems weird. I don't understand it. So there you go. War fronts, probably not so great. I'm sure you can make some money with them, but I have no interest personally. That'll about wrap it up for the week. I want to thank everyone for watching. Sorry for a little bit of a shorter episode this week, but hopefully we'll be back next week with some more interesting stuff. Hopefully I'll get some more time to play the game and get some good topics for us to discuss. But until then, if you have a particular topic you would like to hear more about, please do let me know. I do keep track of these things and record them, and when I've got the time, I am going to get around to either adding them to the weekly videos or making their own separate video if they so warrant it. Otherwise, if you got questions, more general questions, you can leave a comment on the YouTube video. You can send me something on Twitter at darkshorecap, or you can always send me an email, darkshorecapital@gmail.com. Thanks again so much for watching. We'll see you next time.